The time before the winds had chosen their favorite directions, when the plains lay wide and open as pages in an unwritten story, Crow lived with all the other winged and four-legged creatures beneath the watchful eye of the Great Spirit. At that time, it was said that nothing in the world existed without care or purpose. Every tree bore fruit or shelter. Every river carried life in its flow, and every creature played a special part in the eternal dance of existence. Crow, with feathers as black as the cave behind the moon, was no exception, but he had a streak of mischief as long as a bowstring. He soared the skies, cawing triumphantly whenever he spied an opportunity to outwit a friend or foe. His reputation as a trickster grew each time he stole a morsel of food from Wolf's catch, teased Prairie Dog from his roomy tunnels, or mimicked Eagle's cry, causing the smaller birds to scatter in panic. Though cunning and quick, Crow was not satisfied. He watched, day by day, as the magnificent sun rose higher than any creature could fly, shining in gilded splendor. And then, in the evening, Crow saw the bright evening star glimmer on the horizon, claiming the night for its own. Crow resented that his black wings and shimmering eyes received only minor notice in comparison. He yearned to be revered by all, sought after, and admired as the one who lit up the sky. He wanted to be something greater than a common scavenger. Impatient to fulfill his ambitions, he began to hatch a plan. To steal the sun's power and illuminate himself so that he could shine brighter than any star or celestial being. In the warm hush of early summer, Crow brought his shiny black feathers to the edge of a wide river to think. The water reflected the morning sun. Ripples dancing with gold. Fox trotted by, a plump rabbit held gently in his jaws. Even from a distance one could see Fox's bright eyes narrow with curiosity at the sight of Crow so still near the river, for everyone knew Crow was constantly in motion, cawing, pranking, and stirring up mischief. Fox worried that perhaps Crow was plotting yet another joke, but he was too cautious to approach uninvited. Crow, for all his restlessness, had found a moment of pensive calm as he contemplated the reflection of the sun's rays on the river's surface. He felt something stir within him, a yearning he had not known could be so strong. He imagined himself, enveloped in golden strands, able to land among the stars whenever he wished. "Why," he mused, "should sun always have the sky to himself at dawn? I could take just a few rays. Sun has so many he would hardly notice. And if I succeed, I'll become as dazzling as any star that roams the heavens. Then, perhaps, all creatures will come to me in admiration." It was not so easy, however, to lay hands or wings on the sun's radiance. The flaming orb was guarded by the watchful eyes of eagle and hawk, who soared higher than most birds dared. From their vantage point they saw all. Yet Crow was certain he could outsmart them if he crafted the right plan. He remembered how Trickster, in the shape of a spider, once stole fire for the two-legged from a group of jealous spirits, and how cunning alone had guided that caper to success. Yes, Crow thought, it only takes the right mind and the right moment. Before his grand theft could come to pass, Crow needed to test his approach. He fluttered across the plains, searching for unsuspecting creatures on whom he might sharpen his trickery. First, he tested Wolf, sneaking close to Wolf's den at twilight and delivering a ventriloquist's call that sounded like Wolf's own mate calling for help. Wolf raced out in alarm but found only Crow perched on a high rock, cawing in mischief. "Crow," Wolf growled. "One day your jokes will lead you to trouble beyond your measure." Crow laughed and flew off, unrepentant but satisfied he could fool ears. Next, Crow tested Owl's wisdom. Owl was known for his keen eyes and deep insight, especially during the night. Crow waited for dusk when Owl was awakening to drop a small shiny pebble near Owl's hollow log. He then hid just out of sight, making rustling noises as though an attacker lurked. Owl swooped out of his log, eyes wide, scanning the darkness. He saw only the sparkling pebble. While Owl was distracted, Crow snatched up a moonlit berry from a nearby bush. Owl realized too late that the noise was a ruse. He turned to find Crow soaring off with the berry, cawing with amusement at Owl's flustered state. The next morning, Crow rose before the horizon blazed with colour, determined to turn his cunning against that greatest of watchers in the sky. He flew swiftly and quietly, seeking a vantage point close enough to sunrise. Each time he paused, he saw eagle or hawk guarding the warming skies. Feigning innocence, he quickly dove behind clouds or perched on the top of a tall pine, preening as though engaged in ordinary morning tasks. Patience had never been Crow's strong suit, but he forced himself to linger, waiting for the perfect moment. He knew that once the sun rose fully, eagle and hawk would circle in a predictable pattern, granting him the window he needed. Finally, as the bright orb of the sun broke free from the horizon in all its glory, Crow spotted a narrow pathway of clouds streaming across the morning sky. The shifting moisture and shades of light created a veil of bright pink and orange. For the briefest moments, it obscured the eastern vantage, a blind spot for eagle and hawk. Crow seized this chance. With wings folded back, he darted forward, focusing his keen eyes on the delicate strands of light at the sun's edge. They sparkled with unearthly brilliance, strands of living gold. If Crow could snatch even a handful, he believed that light would cling to his feathers. He would glow with dawn's radiance forever. At first, he couldn't approach too close. The heat was intense. He felt as though the tips of his feathers might burst into flames. Patience, Crow reminded himself. Find a trick. He circled around and spied a small patch of dew-laden grass on a nearby hill. He landed there, rolled around, soaking his black wings until moisture clung to even the smallest feathers. Then, still dripping, he soared back upward. This time, though the heat scorched him fiercely, he bore down on a thin wisp of golden brilliance. In a bold move, he held out his beak, snapped once, and caught a single ray of morning sunlight. The moment he did so, his feathers tingled as if they carried 1,000 tiny sparks dancing beneath black filament. The single beam felt strangely alive in his beak, like a newborn fish wriggling in the shallows. A pulse of warmth travelled from the tip of Crow's beak down to his wings. There, the stolen dawn began to glow faintly, turning his feathers from pure black to a shimmering obsidian that sparkled with splashes of gold, like glints of sun on shiny river stones. Ecstatic, Crow tried to steady the beam for a moment, to let its power wash fully over him. His wings glowed more intensely, his eyes danced with radiant light. I am a star, he thought. A living star who can now go anywhere, be anything. So intoxicated was he by this new ability that he nearly forgot to flee. A sharp scream from Eagle jerked him back to the present. His theft had been spotted. Eagle was upon him in a matter of heartbeats, the wind from those mighty wings buffeting Crow's still damp feathers. Hawk wasn't far behind, shrieking her alarm across the sky. Crow panicked and dove downward, desperate to hide his stolen treasure among the dense pine forests that stretched in dark lines across the plains. He wove through branches, ignoring the sharp needles and the sappy pitch that stuck to his feathers. The stolen light pulsed within him, making him an easy target should eagle or hawk hover close enough, like a torch glowing in the forest gloom. "You cannot hide, thief!" Eagle's cry echoed above the trees. "The sun's rays belong to all who greet the morning, not to you alone." Heat welled in Crow's breast. He seethed with anger at being pursued. "Why shouldn't I have more than a share if my cunning is great enough to claim it?" He spat. But his heart hammered, and in that pounding fear he recognized he must act quickly. He knew the forest well. He spotted a thick hollow at the base of an ancient cedar and, with rapid wing beats, forced his glowing body inside. There, cloaked by old roots and darkness, he crouched. He peered up through the narrow opening. Golden sunbeams flickered behind leaves, yet the guardian soared overhead, scanning the ground. Crow remained utterly still. He counted his breaths as he listened for the whoosh of passing wings. He waited, and little by little, the forest resumed its morning routine. Chipmunk scurried with seeds in her cheeks, oblivious to the drama above. A family of rabbits peeked out from the brush, sniffing carefully. The guardian soared away and the sky once more grew peaceful. Crow breathed in relief and stepped from the cedar hollow. The glow still emanated within his feathers. "I have done it," he whispered. "Soon all must bow to me." But stealth was crucial. With trembling excitement, he recalled a spot deeper in the forest where an old rock formation created a hidden cave. There, he could practice using his stolen light without fear of watchers. He hopped deeper into the woods, mindful to keep his glowing feathers concealed beneath drooping branches. At last, he found the cave. Inside, stale air enveloped him. The floor was strewn with old pine needles, and no other creature seemed to dwell within. Anxious to confirm his gift, Crow concentrated on the living ray writhing within him. He ruffled his feathers, inhaled sharply, and felt that pulse of warmth expand until a golden glow lit the stone walls around him. He looked at his reflection in a shallow pool of water near the cave's entrance. His body still looked black, but a shimmering halo encircled him. He felt powerful, perhaps more powerful than any creature had the right to be. In a hush, he thought, "What if I can ascend first each morning before even the sun's crest brightens the horizon? Then all the land would see me glowing, the black crow shimmering with a stolen radiance." He imagined the two-legged, the four-legged, and the winged ones gazing at him in awe. Without delay, Crow decided to test his limitations. He crept out of the cave under the midday sun, shimmering quietly, hoping no one would notice him weaving through the forest gloom. Many creatures hid from the midday heat. He encountered only Squirrel, who scurried away in alarm upon catching the faint gleam around Crow's wings. Satisfied that no immediate challenges presented themselves, Crow ventured uphill, toward an outcropping of rocks used by cougars as vantage points. It was hot, but the stolen light prevented him from feeling fatigued. Instead, that living ray within him energized his every movement, spurring him onward. On the rocky ledge, he set his plan in motion. To rise earlier than the sun the next morning so that he alone would preside over the waking plains. As a star in the morning sky, he would garner respect and admiration as no crow had done before. And, if any dared to challenge him, he would reveal the golden power he bore, perhaps dazzling them temporarily, or, if need be, scorching them with a burst of radiant flame. The idea made him caw with delight. That night, Crow roosted high in a tall cottonwood by the river, where he could see the horizon clearly. He forced himself to remain awake through the dark hours, ignoring fatigue and hunger, waiting for the moment when dawn would normally appear. Gradually, the eastern sky faded from deep black to a faint black to a faint purple. Stars overhead glistened, then slowly began to retreat, overshadowed by the promise of approaching light. Crow's heart pounded. This was his moment. He flapped his wings to rekindle the stolen sunlight, feeling that surge of power race through him like a second heartbeat. A faint glow rippled across his feathers, turning them into golden-streaked obsidian. He launched himself from the cottonwood's highest branch, cawing in exultation. Below, the land stretched in a haze of pre-dawn shadow, but some creatures early risers noticed immediately. Deer, creeping out to graze, lifted their heads at the strange shimmer in the sky. Prairie dogs poked out of their burrows, squeaking in alarm. Even the two-legged, sleeping in tippies across the plains, stirred at the faint glow that arrived too soon, wondering if the day had come early. And indeed, upon that horizon, Crow lit the sky, no longer the simple black raven, but a luminous shape. He soared in shining arcs, performing loops, drawing attention to his display. The scattered watchers below were awestruck and confused, but as the real dawn approached, the horizon brightened more resolutely. Sun was coming, unstoppable in its daily path. Crow felt his own stolen light flicker in anxiety. Was it enough to outshine the rightful morning? In a rush of pride, Crow dove directly toward the brightening east, determined to confront the sun himself. In that collision of brilliance, as the first true rays of the sun burst across the plains, Crow charged forward, his beak open in a fierce caw. For an instant, it seemed his stolen radiance might hold. He glowed with a dazzling intensity, a black star set against a canvas of fiery oranges and reds. But the closer he flew to the sun, the more ferocious the heat became. The moisture he had used to protect himself the day before was gone. A searing brand seemed to slice through his feathers. Panic gripped him. He thought to hover at a safe distance, but the sun's rightful rays pressed forward, unstoppable. Even as Crow tried to hold on to his stolen gift, he felt it slowly being wrenched away, like a child clinging to a spark before the wind snuffs it out. Then came that searing pain. Crow squawked in agony as part of the stolen light dissipated into the morning air. A wave of heat washed over him, singeing the edges of his feathers, turning them from glossy black to a scorched ebony. He blinked through tears, choking on the thick stench of burnt feathers. Realizing that the sun's rays were not meant to be stolen, Crow's confidence fractured. He tumbled, briefly losing control. Feathers bristled, and the stolen sunbeam, now partially wrested from him, flared and extinguished like a candle in the wind, leaving behind only a faint glow clinging to his tail. Crow, battered, managed to steady himself. The plains below saw a single star-like speck flicker across the sky, a vestige of what he had been moments before. Fear hammered in Crow's chest. Landing was the only option. With wings trembling, he spiraled down into the tall grass near a small pond. Steam still rose from his smoking wingtips. He cawed weakly in pain, tucking his singed wings against his body. Regret quickly found him, although he tried to push it away. Instead of ascending as a brilliant star to reign over the dawn, he now crouched in the grass, feathers damaged, heart pounding with humiliation. He recognized that his mischief had indeed gone too far. He felt a cold panic, sure that eagle or hawk would soon find him in this pitiable state and mock his foolishness. Or worse. He hopped to the water's edge, gazing at his reflection, half expecting to see a golden bird of splendor. Instead, he found a grim visage, black feathers edged with a burnt brownish hue, a small tuft near his tail faintly glowing, but no brilliant aura. For a moment, he was too stunned to even caw. A rustle behind him made him swivel his head. Wolf emerged from the grass, hackles raised. "Trickster Crow," Wolf growled quietly. "I heard your cries in the sky. You had stolen something you should not have, and now you are singed. Why do you chase after such folly?" Crow bristled, preparing a sarcastic retort, but he found that rudeness caught in his throat. Instead, he lowered his head. "I wanted more. I wanted to be a star in the sky, revered by all." Vold was silent, then let out a low sigh. "Greed is a heavy chain. You have learned that the hard way, I see. The sun belongs to no single creature." Hawk's sharp cry resounded above them. Crow looked up, expecting another scolding, yet Hawk merely circled, observing. Then she sped away, leaving Crow feeling strangely hollow. He had always been so certain of his cunning and pranks, but now he realized the immensity of the forces he'd toyed with. Still, being Crow, he soon found a scrap of defiance. He noticed that near the tip of his tail, that sliver of stolen light still glowed faintly. It was not a radiance that would illuminate the horizon, but it was there, a small, persistent ember of dawn's power. He tried a soft caw, flapped his wings in a test, and found his flight not wholly destroyed. Taking off shakily, he soared a short distance and perched on a low cottonwood branch. The day stretched before him, the sun shining as it always had, unbothered by his theft. Over time, Crow avoided eagle and hawk's domain, retreating to the deeper woods to nurse his wounds. The scalded edges of his wings healed slowly, though the burnt feathers never regained their former luster. Somewhere within, that tiny fraction of sunrise persisted. Occasionally, if Crow found himself on a branch before dawn, he would feel that subtle glow stirring. He never again tried to outshine the sun. He had learned, painfully, that some powers were not his for the taking. Yet every morning, when the distant horizon began to lighten, Crow ruffled his feathers. In that moment, just before the sun's brilliance spilled over the world, a small spark of gold shimmered near his tail, no larger than a star shining at daybreak. It was a secret he carried, his shame and his triumph both. For an instant, that sliver of light made him the first tiny star to glow in the dawn sky. Then the sun's full radiance arrived and overshadowed him once more. Over time, the other creatures came to note Crow's morning glow. Those who held no grudge, like deer or prairie dog, found it poetic, a sign that even the trickster carried lessons worthy of reflection. Others, like Wolf, remembered Crow's arrogant quest and gave him a firm stare when their paths crossed. Eagle and Hawk continued their vigilant watch. Neither harmed Crow further, but occasionally one of them soared close enough for a warning cry, as if to remind him that the sun's rays were not to be stolen again. As the seasons passed, stories blossomed among the Lakota about how Crow had once attempted to take the place of the morning star. Children heard whispered accounts of a foolish crow who tried to steal from the sun itself. They giggled around the fires at bedtime, imagining a crow with a singed tail shining briefly each morning. Elders, more serious, used the story to remind everyone that all gifts from warmth and light to cunning and intellect were meant to be shared, not hoarded. A great spirit had woven the world in balance, each piece fitting together. When one creature tried to unbalance the weave by hoarding an essential thread, reality had its own way of realigning, and that often brought harm to the thief. Eventually, Crow ventured back onto the plains, though his steps were humbler. Gone were the elaborate pranks that risked the safety or dignity of others. Instead, Crow became a trickster of lesser mischiefs, content to glean small amusements without tempting the wrath of greater powers. Occasionally he teased Wolf again, but with more caution and gentleness than before. If Wolf caught sight of that faint star-like flicker in Crow's tail feathers, Wolf would shake his head knowingly and mutter, "A reminder indeed." And so it went. Crow remained clever, playful, and sometimes even helpful, warning other creatures of approaching storms or predators. Perhaps he realized that living with a portion of the sun's power was as much responsibility as it was a gift. The other animals, in turn, grew to appreciate that even a trickster could learn from misdeeds. They might still scold him, but they also recognized Crow's capacity for change. Still, in the quiet hush before each dawn, if you look into the sky just to the east, you might see the faint glimmer of that stolen ray. It precedes the sun but never rivals it, for in that sly dance of darkness and light rests a lesson of Crow's ambition and its fiery repercussions. He flies across the early hush of the plains, cawing a subdued greeting to the emerging day, carrying his small star with him. A reminder that even the stealthiest thief cannot claim the fullness of the sun's glory without consequence. And so the world spins on, governed by the steady cycle of day giving way to night and night to day, while Crow's faint glow continues to flicker at dawn, half pride and half penance, ever exposing the mischief that lives in the heart of a trickster.